Hello and welcome to Angel's Costumes Behind the Seams. I'm Jeremy Angel.
I'm Richard Green.
I'm Jonathan Littman.
And this week I'm really happy to release my interview with Emma Wright. Emma is a costumier here at Angel. She's one of our senior costumiers. She's been here for 7 years. She actually started with us during work experience when she was at university. She spent 2 weeks here. She went to the University of Huddersfield and studied there. She then came pretty much straight from there to Angels and has worked her way up to being a senior costumier. She's worked on some very big productions here, and she's got to know a lot of the designers who trust her implicitly and enjoy working with her, including Howard Burden, Ian Fulcher, Kathy Zuber, Jonathan Littman. They all enjoy working with her.
Yeah, and if you can work with him, then my goodness me.
And it was a great chat to understand how a costumier works. So I hope you enjoy it, and we hope you've been enjoying these conversations. We've been enjoying your feedback. If you have any questions or requests, please email them to podcast@angels.co.uk. You can visit our website, which is www.angelsbehindtheseams.com, or you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are /costume podcast. If you've been enjoying, please remember to review and rate us on iTunes. And here is my chat with Emma Wright. I'm joined today by Emma Wright. Emma Wright is one of the senior costumers at Angels. She's been here for over 5 years, and she might even be our longest serving costumier at the moment. So, Emma, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi.
So the whole point of today, of the podcast is we're basically interviewing people to find out what they do within the costume industry, the fact that there's so many different roles to do. And I think obviously because we're Angels, we have a slight leaning towards Angels, but it's a very interesting company to work for, and we are part of the industry and everything, but it's not your normal route into. I don't know, actually. It used to be the normal route in, but I'm not sure so much anymore. But what do you do for Angels?
I am a senior costumier, and I've been at Angels now for 7 years.
There we go.
And I got into Angels from the very beginning. I did my foundation course where I had in art.
Okay.
But I had a strong interest in the history of fashion, which led me to do a degree in costume and textiles, which I did at Huddersfield University.
Was there a reason you wanted to do costume and textiles as a degree?
I went to a school that it was drilled into us that we should do a degree. I just knew I wanted to do art, and so I did my foundation course, which led me down the route of history of fashion. But costume was probably more creative than studying the history of fashion as a textbook course. There was more hands-on drawing, and you still did the research and the history, but it was still quite arty with it, which was what drew me to the costume degree.
And randomly, and I know we'll get into it with other things, but if you had to do it all again, would you still do the university costume course-wise?
Yes. I was 19 after I'd finished my art foundation course, and I needed to learn more before actually being in a job environment. I needed to have that time to explore and experiment and sort of know what route I wanted to go down with years more of sort of learning, really.
Okay, and then so you finished your university course, you got your qualification, and then what happened?
So going back, my degree was 3 years, but after 2, you could do a placement year, where you could take the year off and do different jobs, which is when I first came to Angels and did my work experience.
I didn't realise you came for a work experience.
Yeah, and to get that work experience, just for 2 weeks, I emailed Shelley and had no response. And in the end, I actually had to write a letter to Shelley, which Daniel said to me last week, he actually saw it. And that was just for 2 weeks work experience.
Wow. And so what did you do for those 2 weeks work experience?
I sorted waistcoats into colour, and I can remember helping a costumier on the Olympics, it would have been at the time. So it would have been 2012 I did my work experience.
Oh, okay, fine. So you did your work experience for the 2 weeks, then you went back to your course?
Yeah, did my final year, and then 2013 I started at Angels as an internship.
Wow, and then that's where we are now today. So
yeah.
when before you did the work experience at Angels, had you heard or did you know about Angels? I mean, you're at university in Huddersfield, you're not a North London girl. Did you know about Angels?
No, I didn't, but I wanted to come home for my placement year and live at my mum and dad's, which is local. So I was looking at London-based
jobs,
work experience opportunities. So it was a case of searching on Google, angels coming up, researching into angels and thinking, yes, this is what I want to do. I really like the look of this. And then discovering on your website, it must have been a work experience application form, which I would have taken.
So you went from apprentice, or maybe intern's better because you came through the internship program.
Yep.
So you worked your way up from intern to senior costumier. So what is a senior costumier? As far as you're concerned, and someone asked you, well, what exactly is your role at Angels? How would you explain what you do here?
We work in a team massively. Although we are all individuals, we work massively as a team. And as a senior, we probably take on the bigger jobs and the more acclaimed costume designers. We also train up any newbies coming through. We also have the responsibility of keeping the warehouse tidy and organising it into its correct period, which when you first begin, especially when you come straight out of university, you think you know quite a lot and you soon discover you don't. And one of the best ways that I certainly learn a lot of what I now know is from spending a lot of time tidying, sorting, putting things away, picking things up off the floor, putting things into colour, keeping that warehouse moving for which would have been at the time those seniors 7 years ago when I first started.
So, I mean, it sounds an odd thing to say, but we always say the whole point, you start at the bottom at Angels and you're just putting away, and all you do is you spend your first 6 months to a year just doing returns and tidying. And people think at times that sounds a bit, not harsh, but it doesn't sound fair. But from what you're saying, it makes complete sense for when you work in a costume house, because you need to do that to appreciate how the costume house works, or to understand the ebb and flow of the warehouse and how it works.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you walk into this warehouse and on your first day and you think, I'm never going to learn my way around here. But after even 6 weeks, you know that hidden stash of braces down the back wall in the left-hand corner in a little blue box. You learn those things that you need to know to be able to do the big jobs. When you have someone say, I need 10 braces now, you need to know where to go. You need to know the Angel's way, and it doesn't come overnight.
With what you're saying, is who trained you? So who was the person who you trained with?
I had Peter Cameron. I had him for my first year, especially for stock and warehouse tidying, definitely. And a lot of the period shapes training was from Peter.
So do you remember in those 7 years, you said the Olympics was what you did your sort of work experience on. Do you remember what the first show that was your show? Do you remember that?
Yes, it was when I first started, when you started trialling the A service, B service. And I had a Royal Night Out, which was one of my first B services, which was just mine to do. I didn't have any influence or help from anybody else to look after and make sure it left the building. That was my first B service film that I had.
And that was is it Claire Anderson? Am I right?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So just to explain, Angels offer 2 levels of services. We've got an A service and a B service, as Emma said, and the A service basically means we do everything. We're there. Emma would become, if Emma got a show and it was A service, Emma would become the extension of the costume designer at Angels. She would be working in theory solely for that production, putting the costumes as to the requirements that they want, booking them out, etc. But basically being that film is Emma's film, and that was what she would work on. But if it was B service, Emma's role would be much more reduced. You'd be getting an area ready if they were going to come in, and then you would be booking out. That's about roughly it, because they bring their own team in to do all the putting. That's about fair.
Yeah, pretty much, yes. Occasionally, so with a Royal Night Out, I remember it was just a team it was my first B service. It was a lovely team that were just so excited about everything they pulled, and they shared it with me. Whereas sometimes if you're on a B service, the designers and the team that come in might just ask you to book it out and make sure it's bagged and make sure it gets on their pickup, but they might not share so much information about the actual production they're on. Whereas I remember Royal Night Out really made me feel included, although it was a B service, which it's probably why it's stuck in my mind and one of my favourite ones I've worked on.
So with that, how does it work? I mean, it's got to be a really odd experience for you, in the sense of you're on a production. So let's take a Royal Night Out. You're working on a Royal Night Out. As you said, it's your show, it's your production. You're made to feel part of the team, but you're not part of the team. But at the same time, you are part of the team. How does that work on the productions for you? do you feel on all the productions they treat you that like you're one of the team? Would they treat you as another?
No, they most treat you like you're part of the team, definitely.
Mm.
While they're here, and then obviously it leaves the door, and you don't hear much more about it, and you sometimes don't even know whether it's gone well. And then 2 years down the line, you see adverts for something that you helped get out of the door and maybe even pull for, but you haven't heard anything for 2 years. It can be quite strange.
And are you one of those annoying people in the cinema when you see a trailer with your friends or family go, I did that
At
I did
home
that.
all the time. Every ITV drama, BBC drama, that was Angels. Even the adverts, that was Angels, that was Angels. Yeah, all the time.
So what do you enjoy most about what you do?
At Angels, you do, as a costumer, you do a variety of periods. So you could come in the morning and be pulling a Tudor man. By the afternoon, you're doing a 70s hippie. It is so vast. It is so different. And not only that, but you could be pulling for theatre in the morning, and then you're getting ready for a big film to come in. And everything is so different. Your day, every day is always different. You're working with different people. Lots of social skills. I enjoy the whole making sure it leaves the door, the organisation, keeping everyone happy. Someone said to me once, being a costumier is a bit like having a spinning plate, and then you get another spinning plate, and you've got to keep all these plates spinning. And if you can keep them all spinning, everyone is happy and you're enjoying what you're doing because everything is balanced, everything is working, it's going smoothly. But yeah, every day is different, which is probably my favourite part.
And how relevant to what you do daily do you think the course that you did at uni, how's that helped you with what you've done, what you do now?
My course was a third textiles, a third making, and a third design. And we specialised in our final year project on one period. So I did 1950s, and the researching and how to research periods has been really helpful because university and your degree is very research heavy. Mm-hmm. But the actual Angels, there is no degree that shows you the Angels way. Definitely not.
You really enjoyed a Royal Night Out, and there are other things that you've enjoyed. What are there any other productions that stick out to you that you've just thoroughly enjoyed, or just someone's jobs that come in that you're always like, this is for me? Because you are actually mentioned on one of our interviews, whether it's been released when this comes out or not, which was Ian Fulcher's, which he quite likes the way you're rude to him in a very positive way, if that makes sense.
Oh, Ian.
But so are there any, is there sort of a production or anything that you enjoy doing, or designers that you're like, I just love working with them? The same, Rash Pal has Verity Hawks. They both really like working each other. Is there something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with Howard Burden for 7 years. I've been his costumier for every show he's done.
Wurzel Gummidge, Red Dwarf.
Yeah, Wurzel Gummidge, Red Dwarf, Doctor Who, which would have been the first ones when I first started.
So you do, it's nice. So you do build up the relationships.
Yes, that's what's really, really lovely about being a costumier, is your relationships and how you work with them. They spend a lot of time in Angels, the designers. They could spend 3 to 4 months a year minimum, so you're working with them a lot of the year, and they become part of your work colleagues almost, because they're in the building so much.
I mean, we had it with Giles. Basically was almost here for like a year to 2 years working out of Angels. That everyone actually did think Giles at one point was an Angels member.
Well, I certainly didn't know the difference when I first started, who was Angels and who wasn't.
And how is it with you with the other departments? Do you keep yourself, if we concentrate more on military to start with, do you get very close and involved with military, or are they kept away from you, if that makes sense?
Kept away from us, unless there's a really busy moment for either department. It might overlap and we might go and help out military, or they might come and help us. Other than that, it's very much a military and costume, and it rarely crosses over.
Is that something you've ever wanted to do? Is it wanting to have a better understanding of military, or you're actually quite happy that there's a divide between the two?
I'm quite happy. I think I think it's really, military is really different. It's very, I think it's been picked up on interviews in the past. It has to be correct, whereas you get that leeway downstairs, and it's just very different. Yeah, it's very different.
And what is it that you, like, for example, I'm not putting words, we've not interviewed Roger, and I'm not putting words into Roger's mouth, but I know the way Roger used to work, and Roger's one of the people, along with Peter, Roger trained with my dad, or trained my dad. Roger worked with Daniel, trained Daniel as well as Peter. But one of the things I think Roger was always really good at was, if they got set a challenge, he'd find a way around it. And if you had to create whatever it might be, some 1920s costume, and Roger had to cheat by using something from the 1960s or 70s and find a way of making it work. That was something I think he got great pleasure out of. Is there one thing that gives you that sort of the cleverness of your job, or you showing off on your, it's not maybe showing off, but is there something that for you is like, I really enjoy doing X?
I think when you first start and I remember when I was a trainee, the seniors would say to me, "Oh, what's that job for?" And they would say, "Oh, fine, well, we'll do it this way." And you don't realise what they mean at that time. You're learning that what you can get away with for what production. So it's always interesting what you can get away with for theatre is sometimes you cannot get away with that for film. So if you're pulling, you always need to know what you're pulling for, to know what direction you're going in.
So the more information you can have, the better it is.
Yes, yeah. I don't have any tricks, I don't think.
And then with that in mind, how difficult does that make it for you? So you said earlier, in the morning we might be doing theatre, in the afternoon we might be doing TV. With that in mind, with what you've just said, well, with theatre you can get away with a lot more than in TV. So if, for example, you were working on a theatre production, let's just, for argument's sake, say Fiddler on the Roof in the morning, and then you had to do something for The Crown in the afternoon. Is it difficult for your mindset to suddenly click, oh, no, I've got to go into this has got to be completely accurate for now. I wasn't doing that for earlier. Is that a challenge, or is that something that's just...
It does keep, I know, it keeps you on your toes and you enjoy it, but it takes a while to pick that up and learn that. It does, yeah. But it is something that... So with the theatre job, with, say, Fiddler on the Roof, if it had the right collar, but it was a 1980s blouse from Marks and Spencer's, but the collar looked perfect and it was being worn with a pullover and a great jacket, you could use it, but you probably wouldn't be able to for The Crown.
No, and those are the sort of things, as I said, that's where I used to get the thing of where Roger's enjoyment came, which is, yeah, you could use a modern day thing for something that was set in 1800s, because, as you just said, the collar's correct, and it's a nice cheat to be able to know about and work. So, and with are there any departments you guys work closely with, or people you work closely with at Angels who aren't in your team?
Returns department, alterations, and probably a little bit of production, but alterations and returns the most.
And that for you just feels that normal thing of, it's just they slot into, they might be different departments, but they still feel part of the team that you're working on.
Definitely. I mean, alterations come into our fittings. Even if we don't have the fittings, we will be discussing repairing and taking hems up, and all the time on a weekly basis we speak to alterations. And returns is our returns and dispatch department, which is where the costumes leave and where the costumes come back, which is a crucial part of our job.
No, and having a good relationship with returns is always very useful, because if you're desperate for a 1920s coat and all the 1920s stuff's out, if you've got someone that at least gives you a heads up before anyone else gets their fingers on it, you can get it for your show before them.
Yes, and they also put braces to the side for you as well.
When you get to a fitting, I know Daniel, when I've spoken to Daniel about it, Daniel's whole thing used to be, he uses the word control. He likes to be in control. Is there an approach you take to fittings?
I've learnt from Jonathan, having worked on a few of his theatre productions, the best thing is to just be really prepared, to make sure you have, even if the actor or actress says they're a certain size, have something that's a bit smaller, have something that's a bit bigger, have it there at that room. The warehouse is so big, if you have to leave it over and over again, you're leaving the actor or actress in a fitting room, sort of waiting while you're searching, which just makes you look unprepared, unorganised. The best way to go into a fitting is have everything that you possibly can have done, with as much notice as possible, of course, ready. So you look professional. You have researched the period, you have researched their role and what their role is in the production. Just make sure you're ready. Yes, definitely.
Well, it's really interesting to hear you say that, which is, obviously, I know you guys you're ready for when fittings comes, and you don't just normally walk in blind to a fitting. But what's really interesting is to find you guys do so much research for random shows that you might be working on, just doing a small thing, that you would be having to juggle a 1950s show plus a 1920s shows and maybe a medieval show. And you've got to know all the detail and done a bit of research to be at use to the customer in case they have any questions, but at the same time still keep doing your job. So you're doing a lot of juggling for the shows. And I think, while I know that happens, I think about it in that way. And it's actually quite incredible that you guys juggle all of that in your heads. If that was hearing it out loud.
Yes. Yes.
So you've been here 7 years.
Yeah.
What's changed for you? How do you think things have changed from when you started to when you now, apart from, well, I've now got seniority? What's changed in the way you work or the way Angels works?
I think productions probably already in the 7 years have got less time. So there's less preparation. So they come in and they're often got a shorter frame time. So they haven't got the time to always delve in, which means sometimes they bring in a bigger team from outside. So they have a lot of pullers.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that leads that there's two questions that stem off that for me. How is it? Do you the pressure that exists on a production, because any film or TV production, it's the most important thing right now. It's life or death for this moment, and the pressure is quite large that's on the customers and their team. How do you juggle that? Because you've got to deal with the fact that they want this then and there. You know what time you've got and what work you've got on. How do you deal with making people understand that yes, you'll get it done, but not succumbing to the pressure they're under?
Yeah, because one of the things as a costumier, we're not allowed to really show the other designers how busy we are on other shows. It's just doesn't. It's very unprofessional.
Yeah.
So it's always making sure that the person that you're working with at that time, they feel like they are the most important. That you're doing everything that you possibly can. Your time management in here has to be good. You have to microsecond every single second. You know what you're doing in the day, and time goes very fast in that warehouse.
I mean, I think that's the reason we don't put clocks in there, because I just think it would
Yes.
scare people even more. And then the other thing that you mentioned about the teams coming in with productions coming with large pullers, I do remember, and I don't know if it was, it must have been at your time if I was involved in the conversation. We had a meeting in the canteen probably about a good 6 years ago. And one of the points that was brought up was something we hadn't looked at, which was the whole point of being a senior costumier was you got the big shows, you got the prestige clients or designers.
Yep.
But what came out of that was, because you got those shows and because of the way they were all starting to work, all you were doing on those shows was booking out. So while the logic was, well, you've got the big show, you're doing Bond, for example, but that didn't really mean you were doing anything apart from booking out because they had so many teams. So actually the juniors were getting more rewarded because they were getting the smaller shows that actually needed help more than the bigger productions. That was one thing I've noticed that's changed, is the pullers thing. How do you think that's changed at all now? I mean, do you remember that meeting when that all happened, when we had to figure a way of...
Yes, and I think now maybe the team that's in costume department is slightly different. So the work is probably evenly spread out. So people are pulling and booking out and doing. It's more of a mixture at the moment.
Well, it definitely. I mean, what Daniel has created with you guys, and I think there's no one who doesn't speak highly enough of the way the team works. And if you listen to Daniel's conversation, that's one of the things he really is trying to push, is just how incredible you guys all are as a team and everything. So it is noticed, even if you guys might not think it is. But the last question I really want to ask you is, if you have any advice for someone who was thinking of working in costume, whether it would be working in Angels or film. You've got enough experience now working with people who work in film and TV and working at Angels. What advice would you give someone?
I strongly recommend coming to Angels for work experience. You do realise how much there is out there, how much to learn. Even if it's a 2-week work experience placement, it might seem like a very small doors open, but that could lead to lots more opening. Take anything that's in the industry that comes your way, however small you may think it is. It's only going to lead to the next step, and just be persistent. I was so persistent to get into Angels with a letter and coming back and wanting to do my internship. You just show your passion and enthusiasm, and while all of this is happening, continue to research so you have that little bit more knowledge than the other person that's also trying to get their foot in the door.
Obviously, now you've been here. You've been here 7 years, and you've seen what's gone on in the industry, and you did your research, and you wrote your letter. And I'm sure it wasn't just us. You wrote letters elsewhere as well, because I'm pretty sure you wouldn't just give yourself one option, knowing you the way you are. Has that life never appealed to you, working on set or working outside a costume house?
No, I really enjoy the job here. I'm very happy here. So yeah, for me, freelance now as well. I have a family, so it doesn't seem appropriate. But at the moment, not for me. We finish at 5:30 most days.
Is that's the soundbite just that should just be used for that? Is I finish at 5:30 most days.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was a really, really good interview, actually. I thought it was an excellent sort of exposition about what it's like to be a costumier here and how it works. And Emma's enthusiasm and her sort of dedication for the job really, really came across. It's also useful to know she's got a braces obsession and actually find out where that secret stash is, because
Yes, she might need to move it now.
she probably will, because as we all know, braces are one of those things. It's kind of like, oh God, I've got to try to find some braces from somewhere. And I liked her spinning plates analogy.
That was very good. And Jonathan, I find it's great that she said she's learned so much from doing the fittings with you about how she needs to be with other customers, and she's really appreciated the work she's done with you because it's given her a greater insight into the other customers.
No, I mean, I think for anybody who's interested in being a costumier, actually Emma has really kind of laid it out clearly and precisely and concisely, and sort of illustrated just how responsible she feels, how much ownership she has for shows that she works on.
Yeah, and it's the ownership that she presents when she's working on a job that encourages the designer to it's not about relinquishing responsibility, but it's about being more inclusive and trustful of knowing that something that they ask is going to get done, and if it can't be done, then there'll be a conversation about why or when. She's quite a positive spirit,
and it's that thing I'm always banging on about not letting one designer think that they're not the most important and exclusive customer that the costumier's got. It's a good art and a knack to have.
And the other thing which is great with Emma, and I won't say which production or what it's going on, but in this current climate with COVID and all the new restrictions and everything, she's been busy working with a designer who the designer and their team haven't set foot in Angels. It's all being done via Zooms, photos, conversations almost every day or every other day, and Emma's getting what they need pulled and sent across. Is that right, Jonathan, with how it's working with that?
Yeah, she's their point of contact. So as somebody would employ somebody to come in to do that job, she is doing the job of that person, partly because there was already a relationship between herself and Catherine Zuber from previous jobs, but also it seemed like the safest thing to do at the time and has subsequently worked out okay.
Yeah, no, and it's been good to see that as well, and she seems to be enjoying that too. It's given her a little bit more, not the word ownership, it's given her more to do on it as well. Actually, it's a job that is just her. There is no one else coming in for it, so it's a different type of pressure, I suppose, to a normal A service we have, because she's not even getting the opportunity to physically see anyone. It's all via technology. It's great. No, and I hope you all enjoyed the conversation to get a little sneak behind how it works here with our costumiers. And we do have currently at Angels, we have a team of 8 costumiers who all work really, really well together. It's a whole team.
Civilian costumiers.
Yeah, civilian costume. We have 3 working in the uniform department, but we've got currently in that costume civilian department 8 members of staff who all work really well together. They sort of chop and change very nicely between each other with work and covering everything, and it's a great team they've got.
It's a very good team. Yeah.
The next interview we're going to be releasing is one Richard did.
Yes. Sorry. Yes, it is. Oh, it was so long ago. Amy Roberts, lovely Amy Roberts, and of course it's appropriate that we release it fairly soon because of course The Crown is coming back again very soon, and it's a nice interview, and I'm going to have to listen to it because it was so long ago.
Well, Amy is. Did she start at the BBC, or have I got that wrong? Did she come through the BBC with?
She certainly was. She was at the BBC, wasn't she, Jonathan?
Yeah, we all have a long history working with Amy and facilitating her requirements, and I'm looking forward to listening to it.
Amy Roberts is a British costume designer. She's worked on many TV and film productions people will know of, including
Theatre.
and theatre. Sorry, yes, and theatre, including things like Brassed Off, The Queen's Nose, The Crown, as Richard mentioned, Call the Midwife, Scylla and Inspector Calls, Swallows and Amazons. It's an incredible CV of productions that she's worked throughout her career on, and it'll be a fascinating listen to hear her take on everything. And we have obviously already interviewed Giles, who worked on The Crown as well, so it's going to be another take. It's the third Crown person, actually. We've had Giles from the first 2 seasons, we've had Alex from his season, and we now have Amy from her season.
Yeah.
So, well, here is a small excerpt of Richard's conversation with Amy Roberts.
I mean, it is the most brilliant job. Even when it's tough, I can't think of any other job where it's creative, or, you know, pretty well most of the time creative, thinking on your feet, working with really interesting people on the whole. There's no particular class system, which is good. And there are moments when you look at what you're doing or what you've done and you get such a thrill. Not all the time, but there are moments you think, oh, this is why I do this job. When something really works, like a particular costume on Elizabeth I, or, you know, and you think, yeah, God, we're lucky, aren't we? And the other thing I like, and I'm sure most people are like this, something different every day.